everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Obscure Animation, where we like to celebrate underappreciated, obscure, underrated, pretty much just whatever animation we want to talk about, we talk about. It's really fun. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and I'm always joined every month by my very good friend Stanford.
Hi, how's it going?
Yes, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
Yes, this was a nice sort of palate cleanser from all the Christmas movies I've been watching.
That's true. Okay. I bet it's really, we talk about something completely different as well.
Yeah, because even like Frozen 2 has some of those sort of feels, and this is just like something totally different. So it was kind of okay.
Kind of this European art film, you know, kind of this funky retelling of a fairy tale.
Yeah. So today we are talking about a little film called The Girl Without Hands. And this is from 2016. And it is it's basically a self-made project by a man named Sebastian Laudenbach.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That, you know, this one man studio, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and when we say one man, we mean it. This Sebastian, he's the director, he's the animator, he's the writer, he's the musician, everything. He did it all basically in his apartment, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, I do too.
From in France, and it's just crazy in this world of CG animated films that take. I mean, how long was the credits in Frozen 2?
Oh, I know.
I mean,
went on and on and on and on, and these credits were pretty quick. And the names were pretty big on the screen, too,
right?
You know? The different sound people and some of the different editors that he used, but really, it was, as you said, it was his project. I found an interesting article about him, Rachel, which I'll forward to you, and if you wanted to put it in the notes, I mean, it's your call. Mm-hmm. But he's married, and what happened was his wife got a 1-year gig in Rome, and so he had been working a little bit on this project, but they moved to Italy, and he just decided I am just gonna make this film. I guess his wife was gonna be able to, you know, provide the living for them, and basically it was his job, his self-imposed job, you know, just to make this movie. Mm-hmm. And so basically, you know, there was, you know, a few minutes here and there that he did afterwards, you know, back in France, but he made this movie in a year too, which also floors me. You know, just that.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I guess all the finishing and everything combined, it took him 2 years. But again, this is completely by himself. Like even Signe Baume, who we talked about Rocks in My Pockets earlier. Even she has a few people to help her.
Right.
And so this is just amazing, and it debuted at the 2016 Cannes Film Festival, and then got a bunch of other acclaim, including the Annecy Film Festival, which is a big. You know, we talk about these smaller animated films. Annecy is a huge platform for these kind of films.
And I think that's where I had heard about this movie first, Rachel, was I saw it like on the program for Annecy. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just looking at it online, and I thought, well, that sounds, you know, like an interesting film. And I never saw it. Do you know if it came to our market?
I'm trying to remember how I ended up seeing it.
Yeah.
Because I think I might have been sent a screener link. I think maybe how I saw it. I don't think it ever came to our market, which is surprising. It seemed like a perfect fit for Sundance.
Well, it does seem like a perfect fit for Sundance. And we've got a pretty good, you know, art house cinema here in Salt Lake City that often will bring some of these animated films at least for a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. And I just don't ever remember it.
And maybe the hard part is the The wing in Sundance that typically has the animation is the Tumbleweeds wing, which is the family. And
Yes.
this is not like, it's not gratuitous or anything like that, but it couldn't fit
It's
into the
pretty dark,
family
just
section, and there's lots of her bathing and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's very abstract, so you don't really, it's fine,
right.
but
But it's still not necessarily, even by European standards, I don't think it's much of a family
yeah.
film. Yeah.
They actually asked, there's an interview with him at Cartoon Brew, and he said, it actually asked him about this, and he said that in France the target audience is 8 years old, but then G Kids was like, no, not possible.
Yeah, exactly. Things are a little different on this side of the pond.
And so yeah, he said that he didn't do any line testing, so he just animated
Yeah.
that he animated. And then at the end of the first month, I shot this first sequences to see if the style worked, to see if it was okay for me. The rest of the residency that I had in Italy, I drew and drew and drew and drew. It was insane. And so this is a crazy way to make an animated film, to just,
It is.
I mean, it's so old school to just draw, 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 draw. I mean, what we don't realize now is that a lot of animation that's done now is done through formulas that
Uh-huh.
they enter into the computer to make
Yeah.
the images that they want. I mean, they still have to draw their basic overall idea, and then and mold and models and things like that. But the idea of just drawing is pretty amazing.
Well, it is amazing. And he he drew it all just with pencil, with black and gray pencil, he said. And then he shot each of the drawings and composited them on a computer, and then turned the black and gray layers into colors just with just
Mm-hmm.
tinting and things. So because it really has an incredible hand drawn and hand painted feel. I mean, can't you just almost just see those strokes, those paint
Mm-hmm.
strokes, like on every in every scene? It's really something.
Yeah, and he says an important thing for me is when you do animation, you don't have any of the skin. You don't have the eyes, you don't have the human beings. You only have drawings or puppets or materials. In The Girl Without Hands, I saw that, for instance. The characters breathed with the lines, not with the chest, because my girl, she has no chest. She has lines and colors, which I thought was really beautiful and
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that could be necessarily the case with modern animation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, because everything is more based on molds and like I said, formulas, and it's just so different,
Mm-hmm.
very different.
Yeah.
So yeah. How did you feel about the style? Did it take you a while? Did you find it kind of jarring at all, or did you find it kind of relaxing, or how did you feel about the style?
I found it, I think, mostly just really unique.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't particularly jarring. I don't know. Initially, it was relaxing until the story got going, because it's like, oh, this is so pretty, and then, oh wow, this is so disturbing. but it I think I was mostly just amazed again, because I had read this stuff about him before I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And so just thinking about him alone doing all these drawings, and but I was so impressed. Not only was I impressed of course, with the drawing, but I was really impressed with his color choices,
Mm-hmm.
because he really used color. I mean, of course, this is done always, but just to really set a mood, and different,
Yeah.
and to bring out different emotions, because it's also really abstract.
Yeah.
in so many ways. Don't you think? I mean, what's your
Yeah.
take
I
on
mean,
it?
he was saying that some of the frames are just literally just circles, literally
Hmm.
just lines, and that's how you were able to kind of get it to move and flow the way it is. And I think it almost has a feel of something from Japan. I think like it reminded me a lot of the Tale Princess Kaguya.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I was thinking too. In fact, one of the websites that I was reading online, they referred to this as an anime,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was interesting. Like, well, might want to do your homework because it's not. It might look
Yeah.
like it, but it's not. But it's not.
I know.
Right?
I was trying to explain that this week because I reviewed the White Snake movie on my for family movie night for Foreign Language Month, and
Yes.
I was just like, it's from China. It's not anime. It might look like it. Anime is from Japan.
Yeah, but animes from
That's
Japan.
it. But it did remind me of Takahata quite a bit.
Well,
This
absolutely, and
movie.
it kind of does have a feel in a way of some of that Japanese hand painting.
Hmm.
Again, just with the beautiful brush strokes and things. It definitely had an influence. I thought it was a really interesting merger because it also really feels European too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Maybe it didn't hurt that again it was in French with English subtitles, so I kept hearing
Yeah.
French being spoken, but still I think it had the sensibilities, particularly of a European film.
Yeah. He says that that they ask him, well, what is the beauty of minimalism in animation, and he says, what does it mean? Because there's a lot of ways to minimalistic design. The Girl Without Hands is minimalistic, but it's rich, it's not empty, even though there are lots of holes and blanks. He says, I'm
Hmm.
focused on the essence of the movement and the essence of the shapes. I
Hmm.
leave a lot of space for the audience, so the audience has to dialogue with the film as to enter it, as to occupy this free space. So
Yes.
I think that's really good. But I don't feel like this movie is as pretentious as it might sound.
No, I didn't feel like it was pretentious at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
no.
really good point because it could really come across as just like this art project where you're just rolling your eyes, just like, oh, please.
Yeah.
But no, it's really uh I think it's kind of in its own way, it's an artistic tour de force. Uh that's really so striking in its simplicity and style.
Yeah, and I think that it helps the fact that it is a fairy tale,
Oh yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah.
And so it doesn't have that helps it with the pretentiousness.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I think this is less pretentious than say a Don Hertzfeldt short, which
Uh-huh.
I like those. They're fun. But
Yeah.
but I don't know. I feel like this is because the story is so identifiable as a fairy tale or
Hmm.
a fable. I think that that kind of takes away some of that feeling, whereas something like Don Hertzfeldt is very like surreal and abstract, and you're like, what is the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. We'll have to do Don Hertzfeldt one of these
Oh,
days
for
for
sure.
obscure
Yeah,
animation. but
definitely.
anyway, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the story. One other thing I want to talk about before. So one of the things I really like about the movie, not only the music, which I think is beautiful,
Yes,
but
agreed.
I also just think the sound design is
Uh-huh.
so well done.
Yes.
And that's another thing that reminds me of Takahata,
Hmm.
is because he used music so well and he used his sound design so well. All the Studio Ghiblis are so, like when the person is in water, it feels so real.
Yeah.
And or if it's flying planes, of course it's Miyazaki planes, it
Yes.
feels like a plane. That they get that so well. And this, I think, really was helped by just that sound design, because yes, it's so abstract, but you really feel the water, you really feel the other things going on in the story.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the story a little bit. So we start out with this this mill owner, and you have the devil comes to the mill owner. They're starving. The mill has stopped working, and so they're starving. And so the devil comes and he tempts the mill owner, and he says, I will give you more money than you know what to do with. You can have unending wealth. And he says that all I ask is that you give me whatever is behind your house. And the mill owner says, okay, I'll take that deal. But what he doesn't realize is that his daughter is in a tree behind the house. And so he inadvertently sells his daughter to the devil. And so what did you think about how the devil was portrayed in the film?
Well, again, really an interesting artistic choice, because the devil, he what I had read, in this article, was that he didn't want to push the religious aspect, and he just had this, just the way he conceptualized it, that he said that the devil is potentially everywhere, and he didn't want to show him with the usual attributes, like with the horn and a forked tail.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to show him like closer to nature, and so he's able to incarnate everything. And so I thought that was really an interesting decision. Initially, I was a little confused, but then this is what's happening. What's your take on it?
I mean, most of the time the devil is in the form of a pig, and which kind of almost made me think of something like Animal Farm, something like that. With these that I don't think that pigs are as sort of negatively portrayed as cats. Cats are almost always always a villain.
True.
But I think that there's quite a few sort of grotesque and negative kind of portrayals of pigs for it to be an interesting kind of I mean, and of course in France, the pigs are basically hunters.
Yes.
Of the truffles and stuff like that. So I think it worked. I liked it, and I liked how everything became super red. And whenever the devil,
this really effective use of color,
mm-hmm.
and such bold color, because he's not like doing all these different layers and things. It's just all right there.
Yeah. So the devil goes to take the girl, and she's just bathed, and so she's very clean. And he says, well, I can't take you because you're too clean. And so he says that you have to get filthy, and then he'll be able to take you. But she's such a pure character that he can't. He's struggling with that. And so the father, though, of course, is racked with guilt of what he did with to his daughter. And then we get the creek that runs through ends up becoming a creek of gold. And so they're set for a long time, but the father feels badly about what he's done to his daughter. And so then we get and I really like how that creek of gold is animated.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
It was really good. And so they basically like fill up vases and pitchers and stuff like that with the gold, and then they smash then they've got a whole pitcher of gold.
Yeah, that maintains the shape of whatever vessel it gets put in. It's just like liquid gold, basically, right?
Yeah. And so her father cuts down her tree and then the devil comes and basically, kind of tries to get her again, but she says, I will give up my hands in order to and so in order to, I guess, buy her more time. So the devil won't take her away. And so her father cuts off her hands, and you see the blood and everything. And so it's a quite, and especially with the music and the way everything, it's quite a moment.
It really is. I mean, clearly it's the title of the story, right? I mean, it's a big thing, and it's, I love how it's done in an abstract way for the most part, except there's like one shot where you actually see the hands there drawn quite clearly, but it's abstract, and you just kind of hear her whimpering in the background. She's not just screaming, as you think would, but it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she is just devastated. She feels like her father didn't protect her.
Yeah, she really got betrayed.
Mm-hmm. And so she leaves, and she is going to drown in the river, but she's saved by a river spirit who, I guess, finds favor in her.
I love that scene.
Yeah, that was really good.
A beautiful scene. The river's done. It's kind of like, it was like this interesting shade of green. Didn't you think that was interesting, the way they did the water? But you can tell they're underwater, the way like the river spirit's hair is moving, and and clearly she's sinking. This girl is sinking, the girl without hands, and I think it's really a moving scene.
Yeah, I agree. And so she would have drowned, but then she's found by a prince and taken back to the castle, and he's very smitten, the prince, by this woman, and he makes her these hands out of gold. And this obviously requires suspension. I mean, there's lots of things obviously require suspension of disbelief, but because these, if there were somebody were to truly make hands out of gold, they would be very heavy.
Right. And also,
gold is very heavy.
The shape they made them to, like, they're completely useless.
Yeah.
Right. I know it was just an artistic choice or whatever. Because they're just the way they are. But still, I'm with you. It's like suspending disbelief for this fairy tale.
Yeah. And
it's a nice gesture, though.
Yeah. And so they end up getting married. Yes. And which I thought was also a nice scene. And there's things about this that remind me of Rumpelstiltskin. Which I think is also a Grimm's tale, right?
We'll have to check. I'm not sure. It's disturbing enough to be a Grimm's fairy tale. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. The one thing of Grimm's fairy tale you should never watch is the Terra Gilliam, the Brothers Grimm.
Oh yeah,
that is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I've absolutely hate.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And I like Gilliam sometimes.
Right. No, that project seemed to really go south, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did. But anyway, and so Rumpelstiltskin is also Grimm's fairy tale, and it definitely has some of those same feels of I feel like of the sort of the woods, the innocent woodsman's girl that ends up getting married to the prince. The prince is a nicer person in this.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm convinced that's why they never and may never be able to do a Rumpelstiltskin for Disney. It's just, how do you, like, she's gonna die if she can't make the gold, but if she can, then they're gonna get married. like how do you make that modern? I don't know.
I don't know. I think those days are gone with that. Yeah, for that one for sure.
I think Once Upon a Time is about as good as we can do. Rumpelstiltskin these days. But But anyway, and so the prince leaves for war soon after. They've only just, I think,
They just
excuse me.
it was just after their marriage, and
Yeah.
and they consummated their marriage, so she's expecting a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she has a child, and it seems like she's basically alone. There's the gardener who
Which
sends.
she needs the gardener to help her because, again, with her hands, she can't, like, she drops the baby,
Mhm.
you know? So the
Yeah, but I guess
gardener,
she doesn't have like a lady in waiting or
no, that
anything
was,
like that.
which kind of surprised me. I mean, again, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's an artistic choice
Yeah.
but
But
the gardener's the one that helps her.
yeah, but also in those like feudal times, sometimes these areas would be very, very small. At least I know in Germany, sometimes there were you weren't necessarily a prince or a king or queen or whatever of a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's just little areas. So maybe it's something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Maybe I don't know France well enough, but yeah, he leaves and she's devastated, and because she needs him, and he's not there for the baby, and that's where things get messy because the gardener sends the note to the prince about the baby, but the devil changes the note.
The devil is meddling. He meddles with these communications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she thinks that he's like disgusted by the baby, that he's not interested, that it says that I was disgusted by this baby. And so she's obviously very upset by that. And at
Right.
first it was a little confusing to me because I thought, I thought it was some kind of betrayal of, or somehow the gardener was tricked or something, but it was the devil that changed the.
Yeah, I know. I was initially thinking the same thing, or that the gardener just had gone bad, just like, what's happening? But yeah, the devil is changing the notes on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she goes and takes the child to the river because she knows that she can follow it, and she was rescued by it, so she feels safe there.
And
And
the gardener gives her some seeds too, right, Ray?
that's right. Yeah.
Yes, so that she can plant food, and again, it gives them the sustenance they need to keep alive.
Yeah. And so I thought this was another really beautiful scene involving the river spirit and the river, because she throws out her hands and she's just following the river, basically pleading for mercy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was beautiful. And then she says, the river was my ally. That was nice. And then she finds some land, somewhere to live, and she starts to farm. And she's literally, you see her like pounding her stubs of hands into the ground to put the seeds, and you see the blood flowing out. And it's also abstract, that it's not as graphic as it sounds.
Right, but you get the idea. It's exactly done artfully, and
that's the one of the most, I think, like intense, the most beautiful, I think, images as far as something just being intense is that her planting, trying to be a farmer. Like, that's really good. I was kind of, later on when she leaves the farm, I was kind of like, oh, you worked so hard on it, don't leave.
Worked so hard. Exactly. Figure out a way to stay.
Yeah. Oh, and again, she's planting the seeds. She's spitting them out with her mouth. So it's pretty cool. And then she's there for a little while, and then the prince is trying to find her, and because he doesn't believe for a second that that he's really in love with her, the prince, in this fairy tale.
Yeah. And I'm happy to know that the prince is like a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he really does. He loves which is definitely not always the case in fairy
Not
tales.
always the case.
For
Yeah.
sure. Especially Grimm's.
Right.
And so she's living in this space, and he goes after her. He finds her hands, both her, he finds her gold hands, and then he ends up at her at the mill, and it turns out that her father has hung himself, which was a pretty dramatic moment.
The poor father. I just think, boy, he made some bad decisions. One really bad one.
Yeah.
Just deal with the devil.
Right. And then you see that he finds her hands there as well. And and then he just follows the river basically when he finds her gold hands, and he finds her, he goes after her, and he hears her singing. So that's how he's able to, search for her.
Mm-hmm.
He hears her singing, and which again, the music is really beautiful throughout the whole film. And then she thinks that he's no good, because she still thinks that the note that he's disgusted by the child and all of this, and so she thinks that he's there to kill them, her and the baby, and so she's very upset, and he has to convince her that he's there for her, which is all beautifully done. And then the devil attacks in a really cool sequence, I thought, with it starts out as a raven just swooping down.
Yeah.
Which I thought was animated really beautifully.
I thought he did a really effective job with that too. Yeah.
And then it kind of morphs in and out of different shapes.
Yes, he's doing this whole shape shifting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was really cool. And after you've seen all of these bright colors, just to be like black is very striking.
Yes.
And so then the devil finally says, I'm not going to win this. I'm not going to win you over. You're too pure. And so he leaves and never to return.
Yeah, the devil finally gives up. Finally.
Yeah. And so at first the prince says, why don't we go back to the castle and or we could stay here? And she's like, no, we need to find our own place. We need to. And so they go, and that's when she leaves her beautiful little farm.
I know. They leave the farm and they go create a new future in a new place.
Yeah. And so there you go. That's the story. So it is pretty simple, like a fairy tale would be. And I don't know, what do you think is, if this is a fable, what do you think is the lesson of her character, her story?
It was kind of, I mean, I don't wish to overthink it, or I hope I'm not being too clueless. I mean, ultimately, I think I just feel like she's a victim of her father's bad decisions, and it's really, I just think it's about the father's greed. Even though the family was in dire circumstances, you still shouldn't make a deal with the devil, because it's just not going to go well, and it just had horrible consequences. He ultimately lost his family and he lost his life, but that's how I'm seeing it. But I'm because the girl is I'm amazed at her her drive to live.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like she ever really gives up. I mean, there's that scene, where we were talking about where she's drowning, but that's almost just like, I don't know. I mean,
she doesn't have hands.
Yeah, she doesn't have hands. So it's just like, it's almost like there's nothing she can do about it. And thank goodness that, that river spirit helps her out. But so I as far as just kind of like the quote unquote moral of the fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I interpreted it. But again, I'm not sure. What's your
Yeah.
what's your take?
Well, Sebastian Laudenbach, he says some interesting things. He says, they ask him, what do you want people basically to take away? And he says, I don't know, anything they want. As a spectator, I want to feel when I see a movie. I don't like movies that bring me by the hand and explain everything to me. I need to be free with movies, but with art and books in general. And then it's interesting, he says, some women told me, the girl without hands, that's me. You told my story and it moved me. Obviously, I'm very happy with this kind of reaction because I myself was moved by this fairy tale because I am the girl without hands as well. But I'm also the prince and I'm also the miller, but not the devil. But I'm also the trees. Maybe that's why I can't see the film. I've never seen it. Even when I was at Annecy, the French Minister of Culture was in the theater to see the film. So I had to be there, but I had my eyes closed during all the screening. Watching the film is like seeing myself in the mirror. Obviously, The Girl with Hands is the story of a girl, but I think it can talk to men. It can talk to the female part in everybody.
That's so interesting, and that really makes sense because I've never read if I've read that story before in like Grimm's fairy tales, I've forgotten it, and so this was either a refresher or just brand new, to me. I don't remember it from my childhood, but that's so. I was so glad you read that quote because that really is the sense you get from that film. There's not like a real clear throughput, like I was having trouble expressing it.
No, you did good. Yeah, I mean, I guess what is my main takeaway? I think just the fact that she's too pure for the devil, and that the devil tries to, as a spiritual person, I think it is true that the devil can't handle purity. He can't handle, and when we, like, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But if you think about something like the Screw Tape Letters, which I don't know if you've read,
Oh yeah,
and the way that he talks about in that book about the little things that help bring you closer to that Satan will do to distract you from.
And really good point.
You criticize a person for wearing too big of a hat, or and it just starts as this little thing, and then suddenly you feel like you're better than her. And that's the thing about her character, is that she just manages, she never allows herself to be dirty to the point of that the devil can take her.
The devil could have the devil could get power over her. That's a really good, see, brilliant insight, Rach.
Because I mean, and that's why the river spirit is immediately drawn to her and saves her. And I think that she's not a perfect person, but she is in the sense that she doesn't let anything kind of get her down or anything.
Right.
I don't know. She stays pure.
She's pure. Yeah, she does. She stays pure. And and clearly, her motives they stay pure because she's staying here pure. She's pure.
Yeah.
Really good point.
It's interesting because I don't think that it's like an inherently spiritual story, but because there is obviously with the devil, there's a spiritual element, but you could, like you said, you could talk about greed, you could talk about femininity, womanhood, you could talk about the bond between her and her son. There's just lots of different elements that you could kind of talk a lot about nature with this. And so I do appreciate that it's just, honestly, I think this is something you could just have on and just relax. And yet at the same time, it has very striking elements to it. So it's pretty interesting. I reviewed it at rotoscopers.com, when it came out. That must have been how I got the screener, was because I reviewed it for the Rotoscopers, and I said that said the style of the animation uniquely layers watercolor and a sketchy style for a beautiful flowing effect. It feels like you are swimming with the story, and it says a stunning use of color and movement similar to The Tale of Princess Kaguya. And it's interesting because I said the story can be quite violent, but you never lose the purity of the lead character, and the line between good and evil never gets muddled.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Old Testament story of Job. The
Mm-hmm.
devil here appears as a raven and a pig and tries all he can to break the girl, but he cannot. So I just talk about the I also compare it to the Red Turtle, which I think is a very good comparison. Did you ever see the Red Turtle?
Oh, I love the Red Turtle. Yeah.
Because that is very similar. I mean, this actually has more dialogue than the Red Turtle.
Yeah,
has
I was
no
going to say
dialogue.
this has a lot more dialogue and more dialogue than I actually was expecting. You know, I was kind of surprised how much there was, but
that's true.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's the kind of movie that if people saw it would think, oh, I don't know about that. That looks too artsy or whatever. And I think that is a shame, because there's a lot here and a lot of interesting ways to kind of look at it. And I think if they gave it a chance, they'd actually like it a lot better than they think.
Yeah, definitely. You know, as you know, you can tell from our discussion, I mean, it's a movie that makes you think if you're tuned into it, you know, and I think that's always a good thing. And yeah.
Well, it's just nice to have a movie that reminds you of the artistry and the beauty of animation, and that you can tell this kind of story, that one man in his apartment can tell this kind of story. It's just really, really wonderful. And so I'm grateful that we were able to watch it. It was a really fun breath of fresh air. It was a really nice breath of fresh air, this film to watch this last week. And it was made, they spent 415,000 euros, which is nothing for even an indie animated film. That's nothing. And so it's really pretty impressive.
Well, it is impressive. And thank you as always for introducing me to these really unique films. I mean, I'm with you. This definitely recommended, and hope people will take the time to experience it, you know, because it's an experience.
Yeah. Have an open mind, give it a shot. I think you'd be surprised that you actually really do enjoy it. So that's kind of our thoughts on The Girl Without Hands. If you have any suggestions for obscure animation, just let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Stanford, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Stanford Clark, and I also have a movie blog and podcast, which is at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes and YouTube. And you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast. So make sure to check that out. We are covering everything Christmas this season.
And how?
Yeah.
Amazing. I don't know how you do it.
I've already watched over 40 Christmas movies.
Rachel. And it's not even Thanksgiving.
No. So it's pretty fun.
Amazing.
So yes, let us know your thoughts if you've seen this one. We'd love to talk about it. And thanks again, Stanford. It's always so much fun.
Thank you, Rachel. It's been great.
We'll talk next month. Bye.
Bye.